Michelle, just remember to cut that back down for everyone's mic. Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I can.
Not well.
No. Yeah, we can.
Better, okay. We've got a lot of microphones going around today, and every single one has a different volume, so we're going to be in the back just playing DJ the whole time. Anyway, welcome everybody. This is a packed house. Makes me a little nervous. Anyway, if you do not know me, my name is Ellen Williams, and I'm the Director of Strategic Communications here at Still Hopes, and somehow I am also the head of the History Committee here today. That appointment fell upon me. But I was one person on this committee, and really, before we get started, I have to thank the other members, of which this presentation would be nowhere without. First and foremost, starting with Mr. David Trickey, if you'll stand up. David, when we started this project, we were given a stack of 45 CD-ROMs to look through for archival photos. And not only did not a single person on our staff want to go through 45 CD-ROMs, but also who had a CD reader? Well, Mr. David Trickey did. And for hours, he scanned through every single one of those discs, pulling out the viable photos from it. I mean, years and years of Ginyard Christmas parties, you name it, and our digital records. So without David Trickey, I would still be going through the CD-ROMs. So thank you, David, for getting us something to make this presentation with. And then our speakers today, Danny, Ronnie, and Emily, thank you for agreeing to brave this stage and tell Still Hopes' rich story. Diane Fisher and Jane Bruce, thank you for helping us get the photos together and orient the photos. Ms. Caroline Matthews, I saw her. Oh, hi, she's over there. Caroline has been on our board. She represents the Daughters of the Holy Cross, but also her mother, Hazel Fitzsimmons, was instrumental in getting Still Hopes where it was today. She quite literally wrote the book on Still Hopes, which was very helpful when we were getting this presentation together. And then Jim Ginyard, thank you for sharing your wisdom and welcoming us all here today. So, if without further ado, it looks like we're putting a few more chairs out. But we won't hold everybody up, so without further ado, welcome to Still Hopes in Time. In just a second.
My name is James Sanders Ginyard. It is my honor to welcome you to this presentation concerning the 50th anniversary of the South Carolina Episcopal Home at Still Hopes.
In the early 1950s, the Daughters of the Holy Cross at Trinity Church came up with the idea of having an Episcopal home for elderly people. In 1954, then Bishop George Alexander came up with the idea of charging the daughters to be responsible for starting to raise money for this. And we were very, very fortunate at that time to have both Caroline and Jane Bruce Ginyard as members of the daughters.
Our family, the Ginyard family, had been instrumental in the formation of Trinity over 200 years ago. Her connection and our connection with Trinity Episcopal Church in Columbia meant that she decided that this was a place for her to make her last donation.
When Jane Bruce left from her property and money in a challenge for the church to raise the rest, then they decided that it would be the South Carolina Episcopal Home at Still Hopes.
Her dream has come true.
You know, the thing about Still Hopes is everybody has a connection to Still Hopes now. Whether it was your family, whether it was being a volunteer, whether it was a great friend that got to live here, but it is, you go out in the community here in Columbia, and everybody has a connection to Still Hopes, to have helped it come to fruition with lots of other helps. Is very exciting for the daughters.
So please welcome to the stage Ms. Emily Ginyard.
Very familiar with you, sorry.
Welcome, my friends. I'm so glad to see you all today. I'm going to take a few minutes to slide you through 25 years pretty quickly. I'm going to start at the very beginning. The first picture you see is taken from the mansion front steps looking out towards the forest many years ago, as evidenced by the car, and also the lack of forest. The middle picture is of the mansion, and it is the north side of the mansion. The entryway is to the left, and that was being made into a formal garden. That's between the chapel and the mansion now. The third picture over there is just a more recent picture of it. At the time it was built in 1910, it was the largest house in Lexington County, and the unmarried siblings lived there. By this time they were older. They grew up in another house on the property, but not as fine and elegant as this. You've heard funny little tales of the name Still Hopes, and what you've heard is just that, a story. The former names of names of some of their former homes were Evergreen, Hopewell, Rising Hopes, Chance, and then Still Hopes. So you can see it sort of runs up on the same track there. Next picture shows the 9 children that lived here. The Mama and Papa are in the middle. This picture was taken before the house was built, because Mama died 10 years before the house was built. But only 3 of them got married, and this handsome man right there is my grandfather. And that is Sanders Richardson Ginyard Sr. My father is Junior. Of those children, they came an engineer who surveyed for the streets of Columbia, a doctor, an artist, a clergyman, career Army officer, and several businessmen and women. And note that I say women because these sisters ran the brickyard with their brothers. And at that time, women weren't business women. They were teachers or nurses. Can you see the horse right behind Papa? It's just right back there. Anyway, this picture is taken in about 1898. And on the wall out there are some of the artists who was my Aunt Caroline, and those are some of her paintings that actually came out of my apartment, but I might just call your attention to those when you leave. This is, I can't quite date this picture, but you see they're playing croquet, but they are, to me, they look like they're playing in the weeds. So they did not have Susan Boyd's wonderful gift of a court. Trinity Church, as my brother mentioned, has been, shall I say, in our family from the beginning. We've had quite a love affair with Trinity Church. And I find it so interesting that the women of the church were tasked with raising money. Can you imagine being in a little women's group maybe not so little, but in a women's group and being tasked to raise money for this. And I love the story of one of the women who was so afraid that as they made a little bit at a time, that the money was going to go into the main church coffer, that she took it home and put it under her mattress. This is Dr. Jane Bruce. She is there with Gray Temple. He was the priest at Trinity at the time. They are at the groundbreaking for this little cottage right here. It was called the Trinity Home. That's a newspaper article about it. But they're at the groundbreaking, and they are outside of, they're in the backyard, the mansion's in the back. If you were on Lowry's porch, I think that's kind of what you would see, although it doesn't look like that. I want you to notice the mansion in the background. This right here is the sleeping porch. On the other side of it were 2 or 3 bedrooms. Here's a little tiny bit of the mansion, and here's a little bit over here. This now over here is concierge. So any of you that are in concierge, you may be sleeping on the sleeping porch. The real birth of Still Hopes came in 1977 when these 7 women were the first residents of Still Hopes. This picture hangs in the mansion now. But these 7 women were the first residents of Still Hopes, and they lived upstairs in the mansion. One of the women, the granddaughter of one of the women, and I'm just scanning, I'm not sure if she's here, but the granddaughter of one of these women is living here now in McDowell, and the daughter and granddaughter of another one, the granddaughter is a current resident, but the mother was a resident, and she was a resident, so that's 3 generations of those. The first real expansion was the Richardson cottages. You see how lovely and pretty they are. Obviously it was taken in the spring, which I love. They were nice cottages. They were built in the 80s, 1981 to 1987. But as years went by, and Danny was always on his toes to keep us ahead of the curve. He always did and does always want to do the right thing for Trinity. So down the cottages went, and up went the beautiful cottages that we have now. I think cottage is a misnomer, but anyway, that's what they're called. The last remaining cottages now are around building 5. I think there are 2 that are over kind of on the side of building 5. Dr. Julian Adams was the last, who is a resident now, was the last resident to live in one of those Richardson cottages.
I made it through.
This is the building of the healthcare wing. Dr. Bruce, or Doctor or Docky, whatever we affectionately call her Docky, she wanted to administer to the mind, the soul, and the body. And so having a healthcare wing was very important to her. So this healthcare wing was built in 1987, and it was where Hopewell currently is. It was built there. The new one was built. People were moved out. That was torn down. Hopewell was built, but that's in the next 25 years. It was called the Jane Bruce Skinyard Healthcare Wing. And you can see right there, you know what that is? That's the school building where Brooklyn Commons will be. This is conceptual drawing of what the next expansion plan would cover, and that's what Ronnie's gonna cover most of that with you, but to orient you to this, the mansion is right here, if I can hold this. And then this was the first residential area that went right straight through here. And that was the Lowry building, which had rooms in it, and Ronnie's gonna talk about that too. And then there's the healthcare wing right here at the end of that. And we are fortunate today that we have our first nursing director. She was here for 8 years. Her name is Carol Mercer, and she is sitting right there with Gary. So we're happy to have you join us. In 1990, construction started on our first new apartment building, and that was McDowell. It had 33 apartments in it, and you see the construction of it there, and this little pond right there is Polly's Pond, if any of you are familiar with the little pond out there. I think that's Polly's Pond right there. The building was named for Harry McDowell. Harry McDowell was very instrumental in the start of Still Hopes. He worked very hard and tirelessly, put his own money in to keep things going, to get it up and running and keep it going. It was quite a little pet project of his, and so we could not have done without Harry McDowell. After that came the memory care unit. It was in November of '92. It's now called Rose Garden, but it was also called Beaumar. It's named for Rosalie Beaumar, a resident of Still Hopes. And it was her legacy and her family's legacy that allowed the construction debt for Beaumar to be retired. What else is there? We don't have photos of the rehab building being built, but I mean the second phase of the health wing, the memory care, was named the Sanders R. Ginyard Jr. Memory Care, and it is now, that space is now used as a rehab center, and I'm sure that many of you have heard it referred to as Sanders, and it's for Sanders Richardson Ginyard Jr. In line with the mind, body, and soul that Dr. Ginyard wanted to serve, this picture is of our first chapel at Still Hopes. We did not have a lot of, we had maybe 80 residents then, but even 80 would fill that space up quickly. Can you recognize where that chapel was located?
The dining room.
This is in the dining room, in our main dining room in the mansion. That being the, the bay window there, and we had this railing and pews in there. So that was the first chapel. And then in 1997, construction began on the Chapel of the Holy Spirit. And at that point, or now, we have over 400 residents. So the chapel was built large in anticipation of having that many residents. It carried a note, which it was never intended to do, but after a massive fundraising project, it was retired. One of the ways that the note was retired was that people gave various things, crosses and windows and pews and organs and whatnot, in honor or memory of a loved one. This is one of the stained glass windows. If you were to go out the door that goes to the outside, you might want to go by and look at it. It's immediately on the right, the first window. Is it first or is it first? On the right when you're going outside, and it was given by the Exum family in honor of Pony Exum, Now, can you guess where the name Epsom Drive came? Pointy was also one of those people, his name was Poinsett, and he was called Pointy. He was one of those people who was also extremely instrumental and extremely interested in this place and having it run. And it was actually his mother-in-law that was here, and it's one of the 7 women, and then his wife was here, and now his daughter is a current resident. So obviously, they're in love with the place as I am. Pointy was the first chairman of the board. Now, I want you to look to the right of Mary, right at her knee. Do you see the little white spot? Here it is. That is Pointy's beloved Yorkshire Terrier, whose name was Spencer. He was named for some television character. He died a bit before Pointy, and apparently was cremated, so they decided that, the family decided that Spencer should be buried with Pointy. And so when they, and actually Harry and Walter Keenan commissioned the portrait that hangs of Pointy in the mansion now in the hall. He's a good-looking man. It's a big one there. It was done by Robert Bruce Williams, which unfortunately I don't know much about paintings of that sort. My next slide is the chapel in the background, a beautiful chapel. I don't know if Doug's here or not, but and this little insert is the burning of the note that was done in the chapel. And that was in 2002, which was just, how many years after? Was it 5 years? And then, so the burning of the note was done 23 years ago. One little tidbit that I forgot to put in the very beginning was, you all see, we get these notices from time to time with a peacock feather on it. Do you know why? You see it around Still Hopes in various ways. We have a beautiful peacock wreath that they wouldn't sell to me. But, and you'll see some decorations of peacock feather. Does anybody know why? When Still Hopes was operating as a home for my aunts and great aunts and uncles, I don't remember any of the cows, pigs, chickens, and so forth. They were gone, but they had peacocks, and they roamed the place. I'm really surprised there's not one in that croquet picture, but they roamed the place then, and we used to come up and pick up peacock feathers. Didn't know what a treasure I had at the time. Okay, well, I'm just going to slide you down to the
Well, it's good to be here today and to celebrate Danny's leaving. I think we all gonna miss him once he goes, but boy, what an impact he's had on Still Hopes and on South Carolina, leading age, South Carolina senior living, and also all over the country. Danny is a real leader, and I think you'll see in these slides that we're gonna show today, I think you'll see some of the many things that he's done in his outstanding leadership. Do you realize only 3 things on this picture were here before Danny came? The mansion, oops, I'm not as good at this as Emily, McDowell, and the chapel. Everything else has been built since Danny's been here. All right, you know what these are the 2 apartments, Building 5 and Building 6, Main Street, Greenway, the Healthcare Center, Hopewell, and the Wellness Center. Danny did all of this in the 25 years that he's been here. in July 2020, he had 3 goals in mind. One, he wanted to expand independent living and build a lot of apartments. 2, he wanted to hire an activity director to develop social and educational programs for the residents. That's what Michelle is doing now. 3rd, he wanted to develop a wellness program and a wellness center to fulfill Dr. Jane Bruce Ginyard's dream of developing one's mind, body, and spirit. And Emily mentioned about that. So the first thing Danny did was to break ground to build the 2 apartment buildings, Building 5 and Building 6. And as you can see, it rained, so therefore we had to have the groundbreaking in the chapel. Now, this is 2005, and you see in the middle building, that's Building 6. But in other words, the 2 apartment buildings, Building 5 and 6, were completed. And because we added 121 new residents, it tripled our population. So obviously we had the Palmetto dining room, but we needed to add another dining venue, and that's the bistro. You see the bistro right there? Whoops, right, well, I'm not so good about doing it. See the bistro? And that was added so that the new residents would have another place to dine. As Emily mentioned, wellness was a very important thing for Dr. Jane Bruce Ginyard, and it also was for Danny. We had a perpetual forest, and so Danny decided that we needed to add a walking trail in the perpetual forest with exercise equipment in it along the way. And a lot of you all have done that many times, haven't you? But these are 2 of the exercise equipment stops along the walking trail. Now, wellness was also a very important thing for Danny. He was interested in creating a wellness center that had exercise equipment and a swimming pool. But he also knew one of the best ways to do that is to hire an expert who knows about wellness centers and let the expert kind of guide us as we were doing the creation of this. So he hired Denise Heimlich, and some of you all know her, who at the time was the program coordinator at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. And she was in charge of the faculty and the student wellness program there. And she really did a good thing for us, didn't she, Danny? Yeah. So now, one of the things that Danny, from the very first time I met him, one of the first things he told me is the importance of the Leading Age, the National Organization for Retirement Communities. And he said, our residents, our key people ought to go to this Leading Age because this is where what's happening in the future is, and you've got to be a part of what's going on in the future and implement that at Stillhopes in order to stay ahead of the game. And so that is one of the first things that he saw at the Leading Age was what became Solutions for Living. Danny saw the home health care as a way of expanding our ministry. And you know, the home health care that started for the people at Stillhopes ended up being for the community, many of the people in the community as well who needed it but didn't want to come to Stillhopes. So this is through the Leading Age organization. Danny started this. Now what do you think about there? Do you like our blue better? This is the way they looked at that time. It started in 2008. Now, to improve health care services, Danny realized he needed to hire Nikki Robinson to be the Vice President of Health and Wellness and to build that program. And Emily already mentioned that one of the first projects that he had was to transform Sandra's skilled memory care into the Sanders Ginyard Rehabilitation, which it is now. And so that is what he did. She did, rather. Well, here we are. This is how Still Hopes looked in 2013. And we've got, whoops, wait a minute, wrong thing. Let's see. Okay. Do you see right here? That is the old Lowry assisted living area. And those of you who remember that, there were apartments on either side of that. And the apartments were studio apartments, which means the living room and bedroom were all one room, and then you had a bathroom. And so all of these apartments were here, but at the same time, you know, we were just finishing, this is building 6, you know, and this is building 5, and this is McDowell, and residents didn't want to that had just been built up here and all that. So we decided that we decided that we needed to change that and make that into Main Street. And here is Main Street, the way we know it today. Do you all see?
Yes.
That beige this is Main Street. We're going right down here. And then all the things that are on either side of it. And we made everything into Main Street. And what happened, the old Lowry assisted living was torn down. And we did do 15 concierge suites that Emily mentioned about that were in the old sleeping porch of the Ginyard family, and that's what they used until we built the new building, the new healthcare building, and then we brought assisted living back over there, all in one building with all the healthcare services. Well, there we go. Emily also mentioned about the original cottages that were built here, but you know, at the time when Danny came, they were getting a little old looking. They were small, they had little teeny kitchens and all that. And so Danny decided we needed to build new indigo wood cottages that would replace the other ones. The deal was, though, when we started talking to our financial people about how to do it, they said that in order for us to do it, we had to sell, have people that have already put a down payment on a new cottage before we could build it. And so the first cottage, the contractor was starting on the first cottage, and as soon as he finished that, there was money for the second cottage, and that's been that way since it started in 2014, and we're about to, is they all finished now? One more. So in other words, it's all worked out that the contractor who started out in 2015 is still here finishing up, getting all these cottages done because enough people wanted them that the down payment was available when we were ready to build. Now, here we are. This is Greenway over in, whoops. Not good at this. All right, wait a minute, let's see. Let's go. Okay, here is Greenway, and if you'll excuse me, I've got to use a cough drop. This morning I developed allergies, and I haven't gotten through that yet, but anyway, excuse me. This is Greenway, and it opened in 2019. And as I said, the 24 assisted living apartments were moved to Greenway, and then also it had 48 skilled nursing apartments. Now, one of the interesting things about Greenway is that, you know how in a hospital or in, you know, any kind of medical thing, you've got a long corridor where you've got rooms on either side, but it's kind of dreary when you're in a healthcare facility. Well, at the leading age, we learned about the fact that there is a household model that you can put to make it look more like home. And so Greenway, you've got a living room on every floor, a living room, a dining room, and then you've got, It looks very friendly, and so that is what Nikki did. And she learned about that at the leading age. And do you know that we were the first retirement community in the Southeast to put in this new household model for a medical building? The other thing that Nikki did was she wanted to realize we needed to have a concierge doctor on staff, and that was another thing she picked up at the Leading Age National Conference. So, you know, at Still Hopes, there's always a doctor in the house during the day. Mhm. Well, not moving, let's see, what? Now, this picture of what we discovered around 2013 and 2014 is people were beginning to realize all the exciting things that were happening at Still Hopes and how top of our game we were and all the things that we had. People in Columbia quickly began to realize that Danny and his staff had made Still Hopes the premier community for retirement in the Columbia area. And we started getting more and more calls and more people wanting to come and talk. And so we realized we needed to create a new building, Hopewell. And there is Hopewell right here. Oops. Wait a minute, it's that. Whoops. Well, that's going back. I'm not doing it. Wait a minute, let's see. Whoa, no. What's making this thing do it? Obviously, I'm not very good at this. All right. We'll go. Where are we now?
We're on Hopewell.
Okay. All right. Here we are on Hopewell. Now, at Hopewell, we added 80 new apartments, and we've got 80 in Columbia. Okay. Now, this is the time we celebrated the opening of the new building on Knox Abbott Drive, right at the entrance to Still Hopes, where we brought Solutions for Living and the human resource people. The thing was, we've been so successful, people had heard so much about Still Hopes that they wanted to come out here that human resources had to hire more people. Solutions for Living had to hire more people to provide services for some of the residents. So we had to get a new building that was bigger. And originally, this building is on, you know what I'm talking about, this building right at the entrance to Still Hopes on Knox Abbott Drive. This originally was a library administration building, and Frances Case, that a lot of you all know, worked there when it first was opened. She was a librarian. Also, our building just was awarded the Casey Beautification Award. Okay. Now, as Emily mentioned in her presentation, you saw the people, the Ginyard family playing croquet out on the croquet court. And so here we've got Judy Shaw and somebody, Susan. Does anybody know who this is?
That's Sue right here.
Okay. Oh, your name is Sue?
Yeah, Charles. That's me.
Sue, okay. Playing croquet on the new court, thanks to the gift that Susan Boyd made to Still Hope. So now we can play croquet again. I know. Okay, so that's my presentation, and now I'm going to turn it over to Danny. But as you have seen, you realize what an outstanding CEO we've had here for the last 25 years. I mean, Danny. Well, I'm not through yet. And do you realize that just last month, Danny received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the South Carolina chapter of the Leading Age. He is a leader. He is a leader nationally and in South Carolina. And Danny, we can't thank you enough.
So I need to test. Y'all can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Welcome. I'm tired. I think I need to go home and take a nap. That's a lot. So Ronnie used my name a lot as she walked through that, but let me tell you, this organization has one of the finest boards of trustees I've ever worked with, and that's across the entire time I've been here. They are good people. They lean in, they listen, they go to those national meetings with me, and they learn, and they push me, and they help me figure things out. So without a board, none of that happens. Yeah, so it's just, I know I did a lot of work, but I can't do anything without a board that will go with you and that will help encourage you and help you figure out the pathway and how to get that all done. So it's been quite a journey. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm going to talk to y'all now about what's next. And somebody said, so what's next is you're retiring. What else are you going to say? I'm going to say a lot because it's one of the last times I get to say what I want to say, right? Okay, let's see if I can make this thing work. Wow, is that what you expected to come up? That's not what I expected to come up.
We have to, yep.
That is what you
We're on the
expected?
cottages in Brooklyn Commons first.
Say that one more time.
Cottages in Brooklyn Commons first.
Thank you. Cottages in Brooklyn Commons first. So we're making room for you, but you all live here, so we're making room for some more of you. We are expanding, obviously. This is, you're talking about the Brooklyn Commons cottages, and I'm going to talk about the Indigo Woods cottages first. 16 new cottages. Y'all seen the groundbreaking that's already started out there on that project, and those should be finished right about Christmas. There's 16 of those cottages in total. 2 of them go on our campus proper, where we're going to tear down Cottage 1. The other 14 go behind Cottage 2, which will become the road that goes over to those cottages. 15 of those 16 are sold. So if you know somebody that you wish lived here, you better tell them to hurry. One body, I'll come to my fireside chats, and I talk about that all the time with a little less affluence, not people with none. We know we already have Finley House here in Columbia to take care of folks who meet the income testing requirements to need subsidized housing. This is for people that just nobody's served before. You know, we've served a pretty affluent group, that's y'all, and we've served through Finley House the folks who need subsidized housing. But we're going to try to serve the folks in the middle who've just kind of been left out there on their own. And a lot of our staff meet. If you're wondering who that is, a lot of our staff is who that is. Okay. There's a little bit of a view of what's going on there. That's the school district building right here. So we're going to build an F-shaped building to go with that of apartments, 100 and back in the, wait a minute. I need to go back to the house. There's the old school district building. We will do a lot to make it look better than it does. And we'll get the new apartment building up, and it's 12 new cottages up, and that's in pre-sales now. And Jessica, who a lot of y'all know, has been worked historically on the just marketing here on this campus, has moved into the role to be the primary marketing person for that campus. And we've opened that marketing office up where we marketed building 5 and 6 back in 2003 and 4 in the old Safe Credit building on 9th Street. Where Solutions was before we moved in. I don't think I make that any more confusing, so I'll stop right there. Now, that's what I thought was my first slide. I'm caught up now, people. We're going to be good from here, okay? So what's next? We're going to look into the future. This is a person who is looking at a 3D movie the way people thought that was going to be a long time ago. So I've got you a quote there that you've heard. I'm sure you've heard the first part of it. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and then underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10 years. Bill Gates said that in '96, he's been quoted a lot on that, but he went on to say, so don't let yourself be lulled into inaction, and that part usually gets left out. And that's the part where I think is really been important when I talked about the board. The Board of Stillhopes has never let itself get lulled into that inaction. It's kept looking at what should we be doing, what is the market wanting, where are things going, because things keep changing. Now we're going to talk about the emerging trends in senior living a little bit. So obviously things do keep changing. Things like now we have something we call aging in place. Now we've been talking about aging in place here for more than 10 years. But aging in place is kind of a new topic when you get out there nationally and start looking at what folks are beginning to talk about. It's letting people age where they want to age, which is what we do here and what you're a part of. But that is a trend now that's beginning to happen all over the country. Things that are making that happen are things like home care, which we also do, and telehealth is another one that's coming, especially for rural folks who have a hard time getting the health care they need. And telehealth is helping people be able to age in place better than they have in the past. Lifestyle choices, another part of what's going on in our field is that there's a lot more choices than there used to be. So this is what I'd call a traditional continuing care retirement community with some twist, that we've added along the way, like concierge medicine and home care and some of those things. But we are a continuing care retirement community. Used to be, that was the model, that's what you saw. Now you see lots of stuff going up that's independent living, apartments and cottages only. They don't have anything else. That's what they do. That's 100% of what they do. When you need something else, you move to the next place where there's freestanding assisted living and there's freestanding skilled nursing. So this freestanding independent living is this new thing that will come along to work to compete with a place like Stillhopes. Then there's something called a naturally occurring retirement community. Anybody heard that phrase before? The acronym for it is a NORC, Naturally Occurring Retirement Community. Those are places like, in my opinion, the whole town of Pinehurst, North Carolina is a naturally occurring retirement community. Everybody that lives there is retired. Everybody's looking for service. Nobody's there to provide service. People just moved there when they retired, and now there they are. Those are the things that become naturally occurring retirement communities. That's becoming more and more prevalent. With it is coming something called a village concept, and a village concept was born in Boston. And that is where the folks who live in one of these naturally occurring retirement communities come together, hire one person to kind of look after all this stuff for them and help them coordinate transportation, lawn care, roof maintenance, all those sorts of things. And that's become a formalized program that's going on across the country. In fact, they now have a national association and a national person who's employed to help develop more of these across the country. We've seen demographic growth like crazy. Y'all are part of that. I'm part of that. I'm about to step into retirement. I'm going to be, someday soon, I'm going to be one of the 11,000 people a day to retire. That's the number that's happening now. That number's up from 10,000 a day a few years ago, and it grows to 12,000 a day before it caps out. And it doesn't really decline after that. We used to see this age wave, and there was a drop off after that. But because of things that have gone on in this country with longevity and with immigration over time, that number really doesn't really go down when you look forward now on the graph. It just kind of flattens out and stays that way. So we're going to see more people looking to be in a retirement community, and it's going to stay that way. So there's going to be demand. It's basically what that's saying, a lot of it. There are changes in healthcare that are happening. Anybody heard of Medicare Advantage? That's a really interesting thing that's happening to the insurance side of Medicare and posing some real issues and challenges for doctors, for long-term care facilities like us, for hospitals. Then there's something called ACOs. How about that one? ACOs, heard that one? That's an accountable care organization. That's where somebody develops this ACO, usually a hospital, and they say to Medicare, we'll look after all these lives and we'll take care of them, and we'll do it for 95% of what you spent on them last year. So they create this accountable care organization. Now they're responsible for all that. The government gives them all the money, and they pay for all the health care. If they have money left over, they get to keep it. And if they run out of money, then they have to do the care without the money. So that's a new thing. It's not caught on a lot here in South Carolina, but we're beginning to see and hear more about accountable care organizations. And we do have a local hospital who does have one for the physician practice, but we see physicians' practices create them, hospitals create them. Some nursing homes are large enough and own enough places that they have created some of those. And that's going to be a change, especially here in this part of the country as those things really take off. Partnerships and affiliations, we're seeing a lot more folks like Stillhopes who are joining with other folks like them to bring an affiliation and create a larger group. They can buy things better together. They can save some money that way. Margins are getting tougher to have. So we're seeing a lot of those kinds of things where the big players are coming together to form into bigger players. Workforce pressures obviously are coming. Y'all been hearing us talk about that forever, but where we are nationally is in 2017, there were 7 workers for every retired person. In 2030, that drops to 4 workers for every retired person. So at the same time, we've got 11,000 people retiring every day. We've got fewer people in the workforce, more people who need services and fewer people to provide services. Is that something you're doing or am I doing? It's already done. Staying aligned with needs and expectations. So needs and expectations keep changing too. So the job is to stay aligned well with the changing consumer expectations. In this case, where we are, you're the consumer. Your children are our next consumers, and their children are the next consumers. You heard them say earlier, we had 3 generations. In the next 50 years, we'll do 3 more generations. But that's the job, is to always be listening for and watching for what does that next generation want, and being sure that we're changing enough over time to be attractive to that next generation. We've done it so far. That's why you're here. You wouldn't be in these seats and listening to this talk if you didn't think we were doing a good job. The reason you think that is because this board has continually, Ronnie took you through it, this board has continually moved through and changed things to make it where you want to be here. Watching the trends and drive the change to meet emerging expectations. I just said that. So we got to be sure that we keep a board and that we keep management that are going to think more entrepreneurially and are going to be thinking forward all the time about what should we do next. This organization made a pledge to you when you moved in. We pledged you would take care of you, and then we pledged that at the end of the road there was a refund coming to your estate or to you if you decided to leave before you died. The way that works is if we take really good care of this place so that the next generation of folks want to be here. And it's one of the places where the rubber meets the road in my seat is I need to do what we did to make you want to be here as long as you're here. But I need to be doing what the next generation is going to want me to be doing so that they want to be here. And that's always changing. And that's the dance that I dance. Is how do we keep it relative for tomorrow? Because I think about, and I'm running out of time, so I'll just kind of talk to you about what I want to talk to you about and forget these slides. But as we move along that way, we do see times that the current residents are a little frustrated. Main Street's a wonderful place. Would all y'all agree with that? You saw that whole slide of all what we created for Main Street. Would you like to know what the reaction of the residents who lived here was when we said we're going to create that? We don't need that. That's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. What a waste. How frivolous. We'll never use that. That doesn't make any sense at all. Those were the things we heard. But would you have moved here had we not done what we did? And the answer is probably you wouldn't have. And for sure, people in the future wouldn't have. Those are the kinds of things we have to do. When we built the wellness center, there were people who said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Why would anybody want to build a fitness center for old people? They'll never use it. That person, 3 different times who came to me after the board decided to do it, said, this is a bad idea. You're going to build that thing, it's going to cost a fortune to operate, and nobody's ever going to use it. That's not the way it worked out. So those are the things you have to know and understand, that as time comes, your time will come as well when you go, I don't understand why they're doing that. That doesn't make any sense. I don't need that. That's a bad idea. But ask your children when that happens. Ask your children or grandchildren, would you want that if you lived here? And if they all say, no, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard of, come to whoever the CEO is and tell him that's the dumbest thing you ever heard of. But ask them first, because they're probably going to tell you, yeah, that's, they're really moving the way that they should be moving. That would be what it would take to attract me. And if that's going on, then they're doing their job. Everybody agree with that? Yeah. All right. Let's see if there's anything else I need to tell y'all, because I know we're out of time. I don't think there is. We're available for questions, right, ladies? Y'all don't have to leave immediately, do you? So if you got any questions, you can ask us. Otherwise, have a wonderful afternoon. And thank you. Oh, wait a minute. We're not through.
We have one more person to hear from today, Miss Christy James.
Yes. Bring it on, Miss Christy James.
Nobody's respecting the clicker.
Okay, so I'm here with a surprise. And I've been spending the whole time trying to think, how am I going to bridge the gap between the presentations that went before me and mine? And I don't think I need to. So I'm just going to tell my story. I think you'll get it pretty quickly. So around 2007, the Still Hopes Board of Directors and leadership had an idea. Now, you've heard they had a lot of ideas, but this was a really interesting idea, and they were very excited about it, but it was a challenging one and a risky one. It would require spending a little money, about $80,000, and if it failed, who would be left on the hook for that failure? It would be residents. Resident fees would be impacted by that failure. They decided it was probably a sure bet. It was really probably going to work, and they took the risk and formed, Ardent Swallow took a risk, and Solutions for Living at Home came into being. And today, you know, it's one of the most successful endeavors, that's a non-real estate endeavor, that we've had unfold on campus. Solutions, wellness, along those lines. But the visionary, in particular, who really was excited by how that unfolded, got an idea. He thought, what if instead of every time we had an idea like this where we might have put somebody, a resident's funds at risk, what if we start a fund to fund our good ideas? And the Still Hopes Opportunity Fund was born. So, years later, the Still Hopes Opportunity Fund is getting up on its feet. Y'all give to it throughout the year. Thank you very much. But we find ourselves facing the prospect of our visionary retiring. And I think you've heard in the last presentations how big an impact that will be for us. There's been a lot of great ideas, a lot of inspiring, a lot of venturing and expansion that has occurred for us as staff and as residents at the hand of this individual. So we as leadership staff thought, how do we keep the example of that living through venturing, innovation, growth, expansion, but always sort of grounded in the assurance of solid thinking? How do we keep that example before us as our visionary retires? And so we had an idea. We thought it would be a great thing to name the fund that captures the essence of that spirit after the visionary. So from today on, the Opportunity Fund is going to be the Danny Sanford Opportunity Fund. And what will be a full-fledged certificate after the next board meeting when they can all sign it for you. But thank you, Danny. Thank you so much. And hopefully this is a great wrap up for an inspiring presentation. All right. Do we have questions? Do we want to do questions? Or stories? I'll let Ellen take it.
You know what I did think of, because I'm not Michelle Raven, is traveling mics. So we're gonna, well, I can't run all around my
I'll
flags.
go down, you usher from here and I'll go run around.
All right, I'll start.
I liked what Danny said about trying to make this place relevant to the next generation and the generation after that. And many of us have the next generation as our children, and I wondered if it might be beneficial to see if some of those children might be willing to be a group that might answer some questions or give some ideas so that you could be prepared now for that next generation. Some of my children are getting ready to retire and might be able to get them busy, but I just, that idea came to me and I wanted to throw it out there.
Dan, you want to take that one? No, Emily wants to take that one.
Danny has done that some years ago, many years ago. I think maybe when you were talking about new cottages, I don't remember exactly, but I was invited to a meeting here where we talked about what we wanted. I was considerably younger then, you know, what we wanted and what we thought our children might want. But I think that's a wonderful idea to get the input from those people that are be affected.
Anyone else have any questions?
I agree.
Okay. Thank you for your contribution. Any other questions? Francis?
I don't have a question.
Do you have a correction?
As a 4 or 5-year-old, I had the privilege of riding down State Street among all the woods. And out of the back window of a 1934 Ford, I saw this beautiful long driveway. And at the end of it was what I thought was a castle. And it was a Gilliard Mansion.
Can somebody elaborate on just how is this fund going to be funded and what's the mechanics of it?
So we have been funding the fund for about, 7 years? For about 7 years. We have a couple of fundraisers throughout the year that are specifically pointed towards the Opportunity Fund. When you buy the angels for the angel tree at Christmas time, those funds come to the Opportunity Fund. When you give to Midlands Gives, which was yesterday, some of you probably, hopefully most of you got an email from us. It was a little harder to do a full-on Midlands Gives while we were in the middle of all our other 50th anniversary, but every Midlands Gives is an Opportunity Fund fundraiser. But anybody who is inspired to support visionary efforts moving forward, programs, we talk about things like, Danny's talked about trends, but you also know on campus we've been home to a lot of research and innovative activity, the fall studies that have occurred, the technology development that's occurred. I was just reading an article today about lighting that has antiviral properties, that in the next 10 to 15 years, it may be possible to confront something like COVID with antiviral lighting. So when we look at what if we want to implement that at Stillhouse, Where does the money come from to run the test? It's the gifts that people give to the Opportunity Fund that will help make that happen. So if you're inspired by that, you'll hear me preaching all year. Our Second 50 campaign is underway. If that is a way that you would like to contribute to the next 50 years, a gift to the Opportunity Fund at any time will help do that. Absolutely. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Can I add just a little bit to that? I would add to that, it is a board-directed fund. So it's a fund that Annie Sanford and Ray Colson were kind of the brainchildren behind. But it's really board-directed, not management-directed. So management may have an idea that we want to carry forward, and when we talk to the board, and we would suggest that y'all approve that money out of the Opportunity Fund, so that that's how it then becomes seeded, to see if it becomes something bigger than just an idea, but actually something that comes to fruition. I think the example that you used of home care, what if it fails? How do we pay for it? That was a different day. Still, it was $80,000 was a whole lot of dollars at that time in Still Lives history. And we had one program that said, bring us a pro forma and show us. We can do that, but we have to admit to you, we'll make it up out of thin air. There weren't any nonprofits who were doing home care at that time. It was a for-profit business, and for-profits don't really share their financials with you. Nonprofits will, but for-profits just don't do that. So we've shared ours with lots of nonprofits since we started what we've done, and others have emulated that. But we had to just go on faith of, we know we have to hire somebody. We know we have to have a place for them in the office, and we have to have some marketing literature. We finally just said, if you'll approve $100,000 tops, we're sure we can make it work. And 80,000 that's the peak of where we hit before we started coming out of the hole. And it is a tremendous business now. In fact, about 4 times a year, I get an offer to buy it from some for-profit company. And the biggest offer I've had was $12 million for that company. So it's been tremendous.
We have a question from Jim over here.
Thank you very much. Danny, you have been a real leader for 25 years. I don't know what we will do without you, but the good Lord will provide.
Amen.
There is a question in my mind about Brooklyn Commons. I think you bounced around it, but you didn't answer any questions. Can you tell us about Brooklyn Commons and the ministry of the neighborhood that you have implemented?
Yes, but that might take an hour. So I have to give you the 2-minute version. So Brooklyn Commons is an idea of the board. It was a deliberate idea. Once we decided we wanted to buy this property next door, it was just one of those, the board was of the opinion of, if that property is available, we can't not buy it. We can't let something happen there that we don't understand and we don't know what it might do to our community. So the decision was, number one, let's buy it, and then number two was, what are we going to do with it? And that discussion became very quickly. We've been talking about, there's a partner with Leading Age that does a lot of research work on senior living, who had said, they actually published a report that said the forgotten middle. And what they were saying was, nobody's doing anything for this group. So the board said that's an opportunity. We've talked about our tax exempt status. We've talked about, are we doing enough mission-driven work that the IRS and the South Carolina Department of Revenue would understand if they came asking, why are you tax exempt? And that would be a way to strengthen that. So they saw that as a way to strengthen it. That's how we got there. And then what we figured out to do, again, through meetings with Leading Age, people who were trying to pull this off and some who have pulled it off, is to go, we have to bring the fees down, which means you have to bring the amenities down. Can't be another Still Hoops. You can't think. We couldn't start from thinking of how do we take Still Hoops and bring it down. We really had to start with going, how do we take subsidized housing and lift it up? Because it's very different. It's very down from what we do here. And we were told over and over, it's easier for a HUD subsidized project to understand how to do do middle market than it is for a high-end CCRC to understand it, because y'all think of all these things that you have to do for your residents. So we've had to peel that apart, stop thinking that way. So it's housing with some services, with preventative health care as a key factor. These folks can't afford long-term skilled nursing. They can't afford long-term assisted living. So they need to take really good care of themselves. We need to partner with them in ways to do that. That'll be the wellness stuff, just like we do here. But that will be what we do there. We'll bring them wellness. And we're saying that to people out of the chute. So if you're not interested in taking care of yourself, if you just want to sit around and eat bonbons and watch television, that's not the right community for you, because we're going to teach you there how to take care of yourself and put opportunities in front of you all the time. Eat healthier, exercise, do the things you're supposed to do so that you don't need long-term skilled nursing care. And the few people we've seen that have done it have really pulled it off. So we do have a few models to look after that work. That's really what it's going to be about, Jim, is a group of people that want to live in community together rather than staying isolated at home as they get older, because that's what the middle market has to do now. They don't have the choice of a place to come and live in community, but then to take good care of themselves when they do that, and partner with us on taking care of their health so they don't need long-term skilled care. So that's the model. Thank you for asking.
Mr. Mark in the back.
I noticed that there's another piece of property on 9th Street, further on out. Still Hopes at one time had a plan for that property. Does it have any plan today?
He's asked, the question he asked before he got the microphone was about the piece of property on 9th Street that has a for sale sign on it now. It has a little building standing on it. That building is the leftover auditorium from an elementary school that stood there long years ago. Did you go to that school? Okay. That's Emily's school. That's Emily's auditorium. We did look at that piece of property. We walked away from it because we couldn't title insure it. And we know 2 developers that have looked at it since then who have both walked away from it for the same reason. There is a reversionary clause in the deed. It was given by the Ginyard family, that land, to create a school. But the stipulation was so long as it's used as a school. Well, it's not used as a school now. So what our attorney said was, in truth, the Ginyard family could reclaim that property anytime they want to, because it's reverted. The ownership has reverted back to them when it stopped being a school. That doesn't mean they ever will. It just means we couldn't get title insurance. So our attorney said, anything you do there is at risk for tear down. Well, Still Hopes can't risk that. So we walked away from it. And we've seen 2 other developers do the same thing. So I don't know what the luck will be in selling it. You know, I keep telling the city they should just buy it and make a park out of it.
Dan, you have some access to members of the Ginyard family.
Thank you. We do have that, but I understand that takes almost 40 signatures that are hard to get. So we ended up not needing the property, and it's not contiguous to us. So we decided it was just too hard a hill to climb and just not worth the effort to climb it, especially when we got the 10 acres where the school district is. That can change. Jim may change it by the next week.
Well, put him in charge.
Okay. Thank y'all for coming. I don't see any more hands. I'm gonna let you go. Appreciate it.
Yes.